In this lesson, we'll begin building the wheels for the bike. So let's start from the outside in. Open up Maya here, and you can see that we have the wheels located off here where they should be. I'm actually going to build them at the origin, or at least start them there. And the reason for this is that I want to be able to match up. You can see we've got several different these kind of radial circular type pieces, and I want to make sure to be able to match them up. And one good way to do that is I know that this center point for all the different axes is right here, and so I'm going to build them around this, and then I'll move them into position. So the first thing we'll do is build kind of the tire. And so we'll think about, okay, what's the shape of this? This is kind of a torus type of a shape, even though it's not exactly round. So we'll start with something that's very similar. So that's going to be a lot of what modeling is, figuring out, what's the closest piece to this? Do I have an option to be able to, something to be able to add in here that's already, starting out, it's already pretty close. And so what we can do is go maybe to either a polygon or a NURBS torus. Okay, we can rotate it. So in this case, it's going to be either 90 or minus 90 in the Z. Okay, we can go ahead, and if we want to go into the make NURBS torus, we can change the radius. So increase that radius. Okay, we also have the height ratio that we can change, and so we want to get something fairly thin. Okay, now for this first piece, I'm going to actually move it over here and kind of use this as a guide for the radius and thickness. So increase the radius. And let's take our height down to maybe 0.05 until we get something a little bit more like what we want. So I think that's actually pretty close. All right, so we haven't frozen transform, so we can just go ahead and pop that back to the origin. Now, looking at this, I want to actually change the number of spans. So I'll increase the number of spans to 8, and let's increase the sections. So increase the sections to 12. All right, so I want to flatten off the sides of this just a little. So I want to access the holes. So we'll go to hole, and let's select the hole on either side. There we go. And then I just want to scale it. I want to flatten it out a bit. So I'll just scale it in the Y, flatten out the sides a bit. All right. Now, we don't necessarily need the inside of this tire. And so for NURBS, we can actually cut out pieces of this. It's a little bit different than just deleting faces. We can just go to Edit NURBS, Detach Surfaces. You can see there's a seam right there. We need to create another one here. So we'll detach surfaces there. And now we've got a couple of NURBS pieces. We can select that inner piece and delete that. And now we're left with a single piece here. Okay, because of those actions we've taken, our parameterization is off. So we'll go to Edit NURBS, Rebuild Surfaces, and let's go ahead and just rebuild uniform, keep the CVs, and now our parameterization is fine. Okay, so the next piece that we want to build is this rim right in here, this next piece down. All right. So let's go ahead and add that in. This piece I want to create as a polygon. So we'll create a polygon, and we could create a torus, but let's actually create a pipe that will allow us to get that kind of blocky shape here. So this is a pipe rather than a smooth torus. Let's rotate it in the Z. And change that scale back to 1. We want to just rotate this 90 degrees. There we go. All right, so now we can match this up with the tire that we have. So changing our radius. Okay, and let's change the thickness a little bit. So maybe something like that. All right, now we obviously don't want it to be that wide. Okay, and so we can change the height of it. Okay, make it a little bit wider here. Now we are going to be smoothing this, and so it's going to lose a little bit of volume there. So you can see that's what it looks like smooth. Okay. Now I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit of resolution up here. So I want it to be a little bit tighter up at the top. So we'll use our Insert Edge Loop tool to do that. Just add one loop right up here, one loop right up here. Okay, and now smoothing this will give us something that is a bit tighter up at the top. If we want it to be even a little bit more tight up there, even a little bit tighter, we can turn off our NURBS curves and we can add a loop up here or a couple of loops. Okay, maybe move them out a little bit further so it's not super tight in there. You get something like that. Okay, now for this bottom piece, we want it to actually fit inside another piece that we're going to build. And so I want to actually have a kind of a slot, kind of the male end of the slot coming down, and then we'll have that other rim that it can rotate around for that hubless wheel. So to do that, I need to have the resolution in there. So I want to go to Insert Edge Loop tool. Let's open the options. Now in this case, I know I want 2 edge loops. So there are cases where we can say, okay, I want to add multiple edge loops. So I'm going to add 2, and I just click in there, and it automatically adds those 2 edge loops. So I don't have to manually, and they're evenly spaced out as well. Now I want to extrude out just this new strip of polygon. So I can go to Face, and now if I just click on this, it selects the whole thing. But if I click and then shift click the next one in the row and double click, then I can select that entire loop of faces. Okay, and I can extrude those all at once. So extrude, and I'll go ahead and pull those out. Okay, now I want to tighten up this a little bit, okay, especially inside there. So we can go back to our Insert Edge Loop tool, make sure that your settings are back to the way they were, and we can start to come in here and tighten that up a bit. Okay, and smooth that back out. So now we have our tire, and then we have our sort of rim, and then we have a little extrusion coming out that's going to fit in with the other piece that we're going to be adding. Okay, let's actually make that a bit sharper as well. Going to our Insert Edge Loop tool, just tighten up that extrusion. Okay, so we get something like that. We can make our tire maybe a bit larger by just selecting our holes, just scaling those out a little bit. I still want a pretty thin tire. All right. Now it's pretty thin from side to side, but we can enlarge that as we go. If we want to just grab both of these, we can scale them out a little bit if we want to. So it's a little bit, get a little bit more thickness. I still want a pretty thin profile here, but make that a bit thicker. All right, so the next thing that we want to do is go ahead and finish out one of the wheels. So we have one more piece here. We've got this larger interior piece that's going to fit this slot here, and then we have this frame piece that we're going to build. So we'll go ahead and finish up with that in the next lesson.